As if the Great Resignation couldn't get any worse, we had another 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs all the way back in November. And this is not the first time that we've seen millions upon millions of Americans quitting their jobs voluntarily. Over the summer in 2021 and even into the fall, we had millions of Americans quitting their jobs. This has all led to a massive labor shortage in some of our most vital industries all throughout the country. But now it is 2022 and a lot of experts were hoping the pandemic was going to go away. In addition, the Federal Reserve has started to make a lot of monetary policies which hopefully can bring a lot of people back into the office and back into jobs. So if all of this is going on and all of this is true, why exactly are we having a massive labor shortage and the Great Resignation is getting worse? Well, today we're going to be talking about exactly why our Great Resignation is getting worse and why another 4.5 million people actually voluntarily quit their jobs back in November of 2021. But before we get into all of that, my name is Nate from Minority Mindset News, and if you like this video, then smash that thumbs up button below and hit that notification bell too. That way YouTube shows our videos to way more money minds around the world, and we can keep making videos just like this one. Okay, so let's jump right into the numbers here. Around 4.5 million people quit their jobs back in November of 2021. That is a month-over-month record. In fact, it is an 8.9% increase from October and is around 200,000 more people than we saw quit their jobs back in September of 2021, which at the time was a record high. Now, here is the interesting part about some of these statistics. Job openings totaled around 10.56 million in the United States all the way back in November, which is actually lower than the estimates of around 11 million that we saw in October. Now, what's really interesting about these numbers is that the job openings in general in the United States are actually higher by around 6.88 million than what they're supposed to be. And according to the Labor Department's report, job opening rates were around 6.6% back in November, which is down around 7% when compared to October. However, they were still up by around 4.5% when compared to the same time year over year. So the amount of jobs that are actually open are starting to shrink, which can only mean that a lot of Americans are actually still going out and getting jobs, but it looks like more Americans are quitting their jobs than Americans that are looking for a job. The two biggest industries in the index that actually lost the most jobs and now have the highest number of open jobs were the leisure and hospitality industries. The percentage of job openings actually slid from 8.7% in October of 2021 all the way down to 10.1% in November of 2021. And we also have the healthcare and social assistance industry, which dropped down to a 3% open rate in November of 2021. And this is all on the backs of a current unemployment rate of around 4.2% in the United States. And right now there are two major reasons why this Great Resignation is starting to snowball in 2022. Number one is the new virus variant, Omicron. There have been many economists and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell alike who have been saying for months now that this new Omicron variant may be a problem for our economy in 2022. The main reason for this is because there is just so many unknown variables surrounding this pandemic right now. We know very well what the Omicron variant and this virus can do to our economy. I mean, we had massive closures all the way back in 2020 and in parts of 2021. However, we are facing a little bit of a different issue now, and it's more of a social issue. Americans are going out and finding new jobs, and they're finding new jobs that are work from home available. In addition, they want jobs that are going to be higher paying, and they want jobs that are going to be a lot more stable, and the pandemic has caused a lot of issues in a lot of industries. If you work in a vital industry like a grocery store chain, then you can't exactly close your doors because your store sells essential goods and services. Now, what that means is you have to continue to work, which means you have to continue to work around other people. And if there's a virus raging throughout our country, like the new Omicron variant, then you are not going to want to work in that environment. You're going to want to find a new job if you can. In addition to this pandemic making a lot of people reconsider the current jobs that they have, it's also made a lot of people put off getting a job in general. A lot of people are quitting their jobs and now waiting it out, collecting unemployment until the pandemic looks like it's starting to go away. And the second reason why we saw 4.5 million people quit their jobs back in November of 2021 was that because we have rising pay in the United States and confidence that people are going to get the job that they want or just a different job in general. There is a ton of confidence behind workers right now. The reason being is because there are so many job openings in the United States. There are a ton of different jobs in a variety of different fields. So Americans are going out and trying to get some of those jobs. In addition, we have seen the rise of work from home over the last 2 years. When everything shut down because of the pandemic initially in March of 2020, well, some industries had to shut down, but not every industry had to shut down. Some industries, especially in tech, managed to actually stay open and become very profitable, mainly because they were closing offices and sending all of their workers home. There was very little chance that their employees were going to contract the virus and they were going to be productive. Work from home is a massive incentive, especially for new prospective employees who want to get those new jobs that offer a work from home environment. I mean, think about it. You save money on gas because you no longer have a commute to the office. You also save money because you're staying home and maybe watching your kids. And if you're not in the office, you're probably not going out to those big extravagant lunch outings anymore, which can save you a ton in the long run, especially since you'll be cooking at home now. And of course, there is rising pay all throughout the United States. Now, the reason we have rising wages throughout the US is not an early 2022 Christmas gift. It's actually because of inflation. Now, you've heard me talk about inflation a lot on this channel. That's because inflation as of November of 2021 hit a new record high. It hit a level of around 6.8%, a rate we haven't seen in over 40 years. Now, is it a coincidence that this new record high inflation coincides with a record number of people quitting their jobs? I'm not convinced. Wages are increasing all throughout the United States. However, if your boss in 2021 only gave you around a 2 to 3% raise, that might be good. However, you are still not beating inflation. If inflation is around 6.8%, you are still losing money. And a lot of people realized this in November and wanted to quit their job to get a better job that actually beats inflation. And those jobs are completely available. I mean, like I said, 4.53 million people quit their jobs in November, and there was around 10.6 million job openings in the United States. So that's one for every single person, and then some. A lot of these businesses and companies are desperate for people right now. Even if you don't have exactly the right training or experience or degree, they are willing to give you a lot of that in order to put a person in a seat. Businesses need people right now, and they're willing to pay millions, if not billions of dollars to offer you that training in order to get the right person into their company. So you had millions upon millions of Americans who are quitting their jobs in search for a better one. And not only could it be a better job, it could have better benefits and could give you a better work-life balance and could be work from home. Lastly, it could give you better pay, and with inflation at its highest point in over 40 years, that is a big deal. I mean, 6.8% inflation means that the buying power and the value of every single dollar that you have is going down. This means in general that you're going to have to use more dollars in order to buy all of the same things, even though all of the things around you aren't really changing. Now, initially back in 2021, we saw millions of Americans start to quit their jobs at the end of August, into September, into October, and now into November. We've had countless Americans doing this for a lot of different reasons, but mainly because of the reeling pandemic and the pressures our current economy is putting putting on just about everyone. I mean, in 2020 and in 2021, workers across the country faced an unprecedented situation. They were asked to come into work. A lot of retail and restaurant workers and manufacturers who work day in and day out tirelessly were asked to come into work for a situation that we still don't have a clear answer to. Truck drivers and doctors and people working in the retail and restaurant space worked their butt off over the last 2 years, and it looked like the pandemic was starting to go away in the fall and summer of 2021. However, we know now that the pandemic is still very much here, as the United States recorded its most ever virus cases in January of 2022. So this virus is still here, and we don't know when it's going to go away, but you would think at the end of all of that, all of these retail and manufacturers and doctors would get something. However, most of them found out that they weren't going to get anything more than just a paycheck. A lot of these companies and businesses were taking in a lot of these profits and not redistributing them back to their employees. Some definitely were. You had companies like Lowe's who were actually giving all of their employees quarterly bonuses because of all of the conditions they've had to endure during the pandemic. But in general, I think Americans are just tired. They're tired of their working conditions and they want something better. All of the economic stimulus and inflation and our pandemic has caused millions of Americans to realize they don't want a job anymore. They want a career that they are passionate about. Millions of Americans are putting passion before a paycheck, and that is a great thing, but it's also causing some major labor shortages and supply chain issues. And we have been facing supply chain issues since, well, March of 2020. When the pandemic was first beginning, many industries were forced to close down. That created backlogs. And when companies finally did start getting back up, they weren't able to meet the demand of all of the people within our economy. That caused rising prices and now supply chain shortages. Those issues too are not going away overnight. So many Americans are now choosing to quit their jobs and take their chances elsewhere. In addition, I mentioned this before, but work from home exploded over the last 2 years. And some companies are trying to get a lot of their employees to go back to the office. But a lot of employees do not want to go back to the office and are quitting their jobs because of it. And I mean, financially, it just makes sense, especially if a lot of these employees can prove that they were doing a good job while working from home. But with all of that being said, when does this great resignation end? I mean, there's gotta be a time when job openings start to decrease and Americans start getting back to work, right? Well, there is no real answer to this question. I mean, you have millions of people who are looking for something, whether that is wages or better benefits or just something that they are passionate about in a position. Of those 4.53 million Americans who are jobless now, it's going to take each and every one of them to decide what is important to them. Americans have had to make a lot of tough decisions over the last 2 years, and quitting their job is another big decision that many do not take lightly. However, Americans have been restricted over the last 2 years. That's another reason why you have seen so many supply chain issues, because as things started to semi-open up over the summer and into the fall in 2021, people went out and bought. We saw massive spending days and massive online spending days because people have been bottled up for so long that they're now trying to go out and spend their money. That's what Americans do. But Americans don't want to be bottled up in 2022. So a lot of them are just quitting their jobs and taking some time off, which hurts our labor market in general. And it makes our supply chain issues even worse, which is going to drive up inflation. So now it's basically a game of cat and mouse with employers and employees. And who is going to break first? Will employers kind of give in to the demands of all of the workers in our country, or will the workers have to go back to these jobs eventually? Like I said, it really just depends here, and it depends on what the Federal Reserve does and what our federal government does with policies regarding our economy. Now, in 2020 and in 2021, there were a lot of reasons why Americans could quit their jobs. We had unemployment assistance that was being boosted all throughout the country. You had additional unemployment benefits. You also had direct stimulus checks, and you had things like the mortgage moratorium program and a great pause on federal student loans. Americans were saving a ton of money and getting a ton of money from the federal government. So there was a reason for them to quit their job. In addition, interest rates were super low in 2020 and in 2021, and they're still low as of recording this video. That meant that Americans could go out and get loans and get things that they wanted, all at a relatively low cost. All of that looks like it's going to change in 2022. Americans spent money in 2021. I mean, we know that because of supply chain issues and the amount of money that was printed and circulated throughout our economy. When inflation goes up, that means your population is using money. I mean, technically, all inflation is when the federal government and the Federal Reserve prints more money. You have more money in circulation now. That is literally the definition of inflation. However, some of the byproducts of inflation is supply chain issues and prices going up. Americans are eventually going to have to go back to work because a lot of those programs like extended unemployment benefits, low interest rates, and stimulus checks are all starting to go away. Even federal student loan payments are scheduled to resume on May 1st of 2022. Eventually, Americans are going to run out of money. They're not going to have anything in savings and they're not going to have any money to pay all of their bills. They're either going to have to get a job or we are going to see a major debt crisis in the United States. However, there's also a big problem for businesses. Americans may actually last a lot longer with their finances than a lot of businesses think. And if businesses can't sell enough products or get enough employees to actually make their products, they're going to start going under. At this point in time, businesses need people in order to operate. And if they have no people, then they're going to collapse. That could lead to one of the biggest business collapses that we have seen in the United States in its history. And all of that is kind of culminating in 2022. And again, there is no guarantee that either of these things are going to happen. It really depends, and I honestly think we're going to see a blend of both. And like I said, it really all depends on what goes down with our federal government and the Federal Reserve. But what are your thoughts on this issue? Do you think that the Great Resignation is going to explode even more in 2022? Or do you think that we will actually see a balance between the amount of jobs open and our unemployment rate? In addition, what are your thoughts on the Great Resignation in general? Do you think it is a much needed thing for our economy, for people to be putting passion before a paycheck, or do you think that it will lead to our economy eventually collapsing? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button below. Keep hustling, money minds, and I'll see you all in the next one.